Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Brier Grieves Insurance. Are you in need of car insurance or looking to upgrade your car insurance? Well, if you are, there's nobody better in the business to work with than the great people over at Brier Grieves Insurance. They, of course, can help you with your car insurance, but they also specialize in homeowners, flood, boaters, and business insurance as well. So, if you need to know more about them, learn more about Brier Grieves Insurance, visit their website, briergrievesinsurance.com, or you can give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. It is a Tuesday edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Happy St. Patty's Day to everybody. Hope you enjoy this day. Have a Guinness. Maybe you had a drink or two over the weekend as well, celebrating the holiday. And in conjunction with the holiday, we're going to talk about what kind of luck the Tampa Bay Buccaneers need this season to get back to being a contender, making the postseason, and making a run at the Super Bowl once again. We'll talk about some other Bucs news and, of course, answer any questions, comments, and super chats you may have as well. So I'm your host, Matt Matera. SR is still on vacation. He'll be back in a little bit. So joining me as a guest co-host today is a friend in the program. He's been on before. We're happy to have him on this afternoon. You can catch him on the JP Peterson show. Also see his work at On3 Sports. It is Nick Geddes. Nick, thank you so much for joining the show this afternoon. How's life? How's everything treating you?
Thank you for having me on. Yes, St. Patrick's Day is today. It's beautiful to have Austin 316 Day. Just go right into St. Patrick's Day. Two completely different vibes, by the way. Two completely different vibes when it comes to enjoying a good brew. But I'm doing well. My wife and I have been parents now for just over a month. So we're living.
Oh, my goodness.
Congratulations. Thank you. We are in that life. For those who are in it right now or have been through it, there's some, it's great, but there are some, I'm tired. I'll just leave it like that. I'm tired.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about
congratulations, man. That is fantastic. You have a baby boy or girl?
We have a baby girl, and she is phenomenal. Phenomenal.
That's spectacular. I'm so happy for you, and I'm sure you're excited as well. You're a UCF guy, if I'm not mistaken. They're making a run for March Madness. They'll be playing this week.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure Bailey Adams has been, talking y'all's ear off about the UCF Knights basketball team, who we usually don't look forward to much doing anything, but here they are, and USF too. And I believe if they both just start going on a run, they might have a chance to actually meet in the tournament, which would be cool. But probably won't happen. But who knows?
Hey, yeah, never say never. You never know with March Madness, and yeah, good time for the Florida schools. You just mentioned UCF, USF. Obviously, the Gators will be playing in Tampa, so. There is a little bit of that connection as well. As Roger Greenberg says, happy St. Patrick's Day, Buccaneers fan. Yes, happy St. Patty's Day to you. We'll get to a couple of questions and comments during the show as well. Of course, Super Chats get to cut the line. But it's been an interesting offseason thus far for Jason Light, Todd Bowles, the Bucs front office. Nick, I saw you posting a couple of weeks ago, and this was more in the height of like the Max Crosby situation. The Bucs didn't make too many moves just yet, except for Alex Anzalone. Now that they've made a couple of more moves and, made the team, I think, better, but maybe not to the level that we all want it to be at. How do you view this offseason thus far for Tampa Bay in terms of making their team better and having a chance to, compete next season?
I'm very conflicted about it, to be honest with you, because yes, I think I was a very vocal proponent. I think a lot of people have been right that we wanted to see the Bucs make that big move that would maybe put this team, edge this team a little closer to being a true contender in the NFC, because I think the way they're currently constructed right now, before we even get to the draft, and when you look at the free agent additions that they've made, whether that's Anzalone, A'Shawn Robinson, Al-Quanid Muhammad, Miles Killebrew at special teams, and that's basically a package with Danny Smith coming in to really help that special teams. That's probably the best hire I think they've made on the staff so far, or the one I feel the most confident about. And Kenneth Gainwell also coming from Pittsburgh on the at the running back position to fill the hole that Rachaad White left. So I like these moves. Like if you compare them to like who exited the room and who came in, Kenneth Gainwell, based on what he did last year, now he's not going to be the necessarily the blocker that Rachaad White is, but he provides a lot more juice than Rashad. So I could buy that as an upgrade. I can buy Alex Anzalone as an upgrade over anybody in the linebacker room. Again, that being said, you could put almost anybody in that linebacker room this year, and they would be an up. I can buy Al-Quadin Muhammad being an upgrade to Chris Braswell, to Anthony Nelson / David Walker, who maybe is unfair to throw in there because we haven't seen him. I can buy all of that, but then you also have to realize that Mike Evans is no longer in the building. And I was okay with Mike going elsewhere if that's so what he wanted to do. I have no problem with him choosing to do what he wants to do, be selfish for the first time in his career, really. But that was contingent upon the Bucs making a major splash on the defensive side of the ball. That didn't materialize. So now you have to look at it in the fact that the Bucs offense does not have Mike Evans. They are built more than other teams to withstand the loss of him, but they also don't have a natural X on the roster as where we stand right now. Maybe they add a veteran, a free agent veteran that they can get cheap just to, hey, here's a bigger guy that we can add into the room. Maybe that comes to the draft. Maybe they're good as it is. But you're going to feel a little bit of a loss of Mike Evans. There's no doubt about that. And the other one that I don't think it's talked about enough either is Jamel Dean. We knew that there was a 0.001% chance that Jamel was coming back. We understand the durability concerns. But when he was on the field last year, that was probably the best football Jamel Dean's played in
no doubt
years, or maybe ever. Like he was that good. Maybe going into a contract year, maybe that was, we see guys pop off in contract years. But point being, take Jamel Dean out of that room and you start to look at it and you're like, okay, Zion didn't have a good year last year. Ben Morrison didn't look ready to play. Injury concerns there. Parrish is your nickel. Isian didn't come back. And now you're like, oh man, are the Bucs a little thin at the cornerback position? So that's why I'm conflicted. I think they upgraded certain parts of the team, and I think they've done enough to sort of maintain maybe being in that 8 to 10, sort of win range window that they've been in. I just don't think nothing has changed my feeling that, hey, all of a sudden, they're competing with the Seattle Seahawks, or they're competing with the Los Angeles Rams, those types of guys in the NFC.
Yeah, I definitely don't think they are in that category just yet. And I think you make a really good point about the cornerback position. I was actually going to bring them up a little bit later in kind of like a rapid fire type of situation. So I will circle back to that. But it is interesting because it feels like this offseason, or if you're just looking at the overall roster of this team on the defensive side, and we all knew there were a lot of things that needed to be fixed on the defensive side. I mean, they fired half of their coaching staff.
Right.
The only guy that stayed, there were a couple of guys that stayed, but the main guy that stayed was the worst coach for that group, which was their defensive coordinator, which happens to be their head coach as well. I'm not trying to make this just a bash Todd Bowles type of episode, but you look at what they addressed at on the defense through free agency, and it kind of almost puts the wool over our eyes that we're all just kind of expecting Zion McCollum to bounce back. And we're all just expecting Benjamin Morrison to stay healthy. And I think a lot of us really like what Jacob Parrish did, but he's more slotted to just be a slot corner in his career because of his size, and he can play outside if it is needed. So I guess what I'll ask you is, where is your biggest concern right now on the defense? Like, I don't think corner's number one, but I think it sneaks into there a little bit more when a lot of us have been talking about inside linebacker and outside linebacker. Cornerback, I don't know if it's reached the point of defensive tackle just yet in terms of like that rankings, but I think you have a point. It's certainly closer than I think people might imagine.
It is close. I don't know if it's a position necessarily that they're going to address in the early rounds of the draft, because I still think, as far as I'm concerned, Matt, defensive end, edge, and inside linebacker, that to me was, I think everybody was in agreement that those were the two things that had to be fixed the most. And I don't think,
for sure,
like the Al-Quadin Muhammad, like, I think he's a very helpful player. And I think he brings great energy to the room. And like I said earlier, I think he's substantially better than Anthony Nelson / Chris Braswell, and you got him really cheap. Anzalone, to me, I'm really unsure about that one. Like, he is a veteran kind of guy, and he's going to know where he needs to be. Last year, a lot of times it looked like Servassier didn't know what was going on out there. You're not going to probably have that with Anzalone, but he's also going to be 32 early in the season. He's not nearly the athlete that he was earlier in his career. There have been some injuries in New Orleans. There were injuries one of the seasons that he was in Detroit. So that room to me is still the one that I look at going into the draft. Nothing to me has been settled there because they needed, in my opinion, to get younger and more athletic at the linebacker position. I don't think Alex Anzalone solves that. And if the Bucs are still, we're still doing the waiting game for Levante David. And I don't want to say a bad word about Levante David, but we have to be realistic. I don't have a palette for a 36-year-old Levante David next to a 32-year-old Alex Anzalone. That can't be my starting linebackers going into next season after what we just watched. I think that's not going to work. So I question a little bit the fit of Anzalone. And I actually thought there were maybe some other linebackers who fit more of that profile that we were looking for that got maybe, just $1 million or $2 million more on their deal, or even a guy like Quincy Williams, who is a bounce back candidate who was an all-pro a few years ago. I think he got like 2 years, $6 million or something like that. It was crazy. But he was sort of like that profile, that I'm looking for. And I don't know if Anzalone fits that, but if you're just saying he's better than Savassi Dennis and what the version of Levante David was last year, okay. But to me, you still need 2 more linebackers to add to that room.
It very much feels like the Bucs have just forecasted that they're going to draft at least 2 inside linebackers in the draft because they hadn't added anybody else. It's
not a bad strategy because it's a loaded group. It really is.
No doubt. Yeah, for sure. But then you are putting a lot of stock in just rookies to get the job done, which I'm okay with, especially, if it's your first round pick or even your second round pick. I mean, Pewter Report stands for Please Rodriguez, with how much we've been talking about Jacob Rodriguez and guys like that. At this point, I just feel like Savassi Dennis is a third string who you would prefer to be a fourth string inside linebacker on this team. And he's not awful by any means. Like, I think he was better than KJ Britt and what KJ Britt did on this team 2 seasons ago. But it's clear that there needs to be a revamping. And I'm glad you mentioned Quincy Williams, because I was a huge fan of him. I watched him a ton. Team captain, former all-pro player. I think that would have been a great signing, especially when you see the amount of money or the lack of money that he got compared to Anzalone, who maybe would have taken less money as well, considering that his family lives in Tampa, they're Gators, everything like that.
I could have taken both, to be honest with you. Yeah. At the deal that they got at Quincy, $3 million against the cap, or sometimes in some of these deals, it's not even that. I could have taken them both, but they didn't see it that way. Or Quincy wanted to go. I forget even where he went. Was it Cleveland? I want to say he went.
Yes. It was the Browns, and
that's a better defense, for being honest. I mean,
and I get it in terms of, people will say, oh, like they shouldn't be adding all of these older inside linebackers. That's what they did last season. But it's vastly different what they did last year at inside linebacker and this year. Last year, Andrew Walker didn't even make not Andrew Walker, but Walker didn't even make the team. Anthony Walker didn't even make the team. Like, he ended up going to the Colts. Deion Jones would have been out of the league if he hadn't, signed with the Bucs in December of the season before. Williams and Anzalone, these were guys that were starting, that were leaders on their team. It's definitely different what they were trying to do and what they did with Anzalone this year compared to, what they were doing a season ago. I'm with you as well. Like, I hope Levante just kind of retires so it makes it easier.
I don't want to see him go out like this. I don't think anybody does. That was tough watching him last year. And, I know that they're saying that was the knee injury. Like, I think his agent came out and said that he had to drain his knee or something, after every game. Like, I hear that and I'm understanding, but that's just, I personally, unless it was like something that was like super cheap, and I mean super cheap. Like, I'm not giving Levante David like the $7 million or the $8 million. Like, no. I can't do that. Can't do it.
And that's kind of the sentimental stuff that Jason Light has, I guess, spurned him a little bit before, like the hindsight's 2020, but like the Chris Godwin Jr. deal and everything like that, the amount that they gave him and for the years and everything like that. But before we talk about Chris Godwin Jr., a couple of those guys, let me ask you, we did a PR roundtable about this, but curious to get your opinion on it as well. of all of these signings, who do you think is going to make the biggest impact for this team going into the 2026 season?
That is interesting. I'm almost tempted to no, let me back up. I was tempted to say Kenneth Gainwell, but I started thinking about it and I'm like, the offenses that he kind of played in with Pittsburgh, it was really bizarre. I'll just put it that way, is how I would describe Pittsburgh's offense and his usage. And I don't think he's going to get anywhere near that. So I'll put him to the side, but I am excited. I do kind of think it's probably going to be Al-Qadim Muhammad, I think.
Okay.
Now, I don't think he's going to get 11 sacks. I don't see that happening. But I think then this is kind of goes in general to all the signings they made on defense, even though we can pick apart, certain things like fit and whatnot and age. All three of them, but especially Al-Qadim Muhammad, they really fit that sort of like play with their hair on fire type of mentality and have an edge to them. And that's what I will give the Bucs. And it's like, that's why it's like, as much as we can be critical about them, what were we saying last year? Oh, this Bucs defense doesn't have any sort of edge to it, right? They got no dogs out there. They got a bunch of nice guys. And to the point where they're bringing back Jason Pierre-Paul to have some of the worst reps that you are ever going to see an outside linebacker take. And it's nothing to do with JPP. Wish we had the version from 7 years ago on this roster, but that was ridiculous. But him coming into that room, again, I don't necessarily think he's suited to be a like full down starter, 3-down starter, next to Yaya Diaby. And we know based on what hasn't happened in this offseason, they're going to bring a rookie in, whether that's at pick 15, whether they trade down, use pick 46, whatever. But I do think he elevates that room, a good bit. And, as that comment comes up right here, I mean, if he just needs 3 sacks and he beats what Hassan Reddick did. So, I think it actually might end up being Al-Qadim Muhammad.
Very interesting. And Low Country Pirate, for those listening on the audio version, said if Muhammad gets 3, he beats Hassan Reddick. I think it's fascinating, too. I mean, for him to duplicate 11 sacks, and especially when he's not playing next to Aiden Hutchinson, will be very difficult. But I think what's interesting is, he only played like around 40% of the snaps defensively for the Lions. It wasn't like he was out there every single drive getting the job done. So you're absolutely right. He is that play like his hair is on fire type of guy, which is absolutely what this team needs. That's why I actually picked A'Shawn Robinson. I mean, I fell in love with him as soon as I was on that press conference with him, seeing him talking about wanting to beat up the opponents and seeing how he's a fire starter and everything like that. I think it's more than anything else, and obviously he's vastly different than Logan Hall. More than anything else, whether it's Anzalone, whether it's Muhammad, whether it's Robinson, they just need guys that will come in and completely flip the script and change the tune of this team. Because it felt like last year, and specifically on the defensive side, a lot of it was, oh boy, here we go again. Who's going to make a play? Everybody's looking around for someone else to make a play, and no one did. And they got pushed around a lot because of it. But these guys, and Robinson specifically, is going to come in there and say, no more, not happening with us. Because as much as the talent that they have on this team defensively, they don't have a ton. And JPP was like one of those guys that will either get in your face or be the one giving speeches. Vita Vea, great player, but he's
not
calm, cool, collected. He's not a loudmouth. And I'm not saying everyone needs to be a loudmouth. Levante David, lead by example, not necessarily a loud fire starter type of guy. Antoine Winfield Jr., not that guy either. Nobody was in that room kind of doing their thing to rile up the crowd and the players. And I think Robinson will be one of those guys. So that's why I'm super excited what he'll bring to Tampa Bay.
You make really good points on Robinson. And what I will add to him, he's getting paid, 1 year, $10 million. Listen, probably a little overpriced for the player that he is, if we're being honest. But I think you might be paying a little bit more. First of all, it's free agency, so everybody gets overpaid. But you're also, I think, paying for, like you said, the intangible part of it. And he's a guy that comes in, I think accountability is the word. I think this team has been lacking, and Todd said it last year, when he basically threw the whole team under the bus. We coaches, we've done all we can do. And I think there might have been some personal accountability issues on that defense last year of somebody step up and say, hey, you know what? Enough's enough, man. Like we got to dig ourselves out of this. He's not going to, if you're expecting A'Shawn Robinson because he's making $10 million to have, 6 sacks like Vita Vea has or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's erase that thought right now because it's not happening. But he's going to be a decent to good, run stuffer. If he gets the right matchup, he can bulldoze somebody back into the quarterback and he'll have some moments there. But I think more importantly, first of all, size, he brings size. And that's what, Todd told you, I believe at the combine, it was, you asked the question about what they want to accomplish. And he said they want to get bigger. And defensive tackle, I think, is exactly what he was talking about because Greg Gaines, not that profile, Logan Hall, not that profile. So he fits that billing. He's won a Super Bowl in Los Angeles. Then he hopped over to Detroit. I believe right after, or no, he was in Detroit before that, actually. Bad example. He was in the old regime of Detroit. Point being, though, he was in Los Angeles, won a Super Bowl there. Then he got to have some success last year in Carolina. So he knows what it looks like. He's another guy who knows what it looks like.
Championship pedigree for sure. And I keep saying this on the show, but it's so fun that I feel like I need to keep saying it. He did win a Super Bowl with the Rams. He spent one season with the Giants in 2023. His teammate there was Nacho, Raheem Nunez-Roches, and the personalities of those two guys absolutely loved. I'm sure that was fantastic. But yeah, super excited to see him with Tampa Bay. By the way, Aviation says, Nick is a ball knower. Yeah, shout out to Nick being on the show. You could follow Nick Geddes at Nick Geddes News. We'll put it up on the screen there. See him over on the JP Peterson show and on 3 Sports as well. Another signing I wanted to ask you about, it's actually a re-signing in Cade Otton. It felt like this was kind of the pivot for the Bucs once they pretty much got the idea that Mike was going to another team, which ended up being San Francisco. I'm kind of like so when it comes to Cade Otton, especially when there were other tight ends available, and certainly the draft is, available for Tampa Bay and all the other teams as well. What'd you make of the Cade Otton signing, and is there a chance with Zach Robinson here that, he's obviously not going to be Kyle Pitts, but can bring a little bit more production than he did a season ago?
I want to start by saying that I think Cade Otton is maybe the most overhated player that I've on the Bucs right now. I know a lot. I know a lot of people do not like Cade Otton as a player, or they don't rate him, and he's not perfect. Okay. But I admire him that he came into this league, and I don't think he was a good blocker at all. I think he's progressed his game so much that he's become really, really solid at it. I think he's really, solid. I mean, last year wasn't great for him, but listen, not everybody was. I don't know who was great last year for the Bucs. So
yes,
not here all across the board. I think he's a very capable all-around tight end. If you were ranking tight ends, and listen, there's different types of tight ends in this league, he's probably somewhere in that like 12 to 17-ish range. If I had to guess about Cade Otton, I'm not ranking him right now, but you get the point. So I think he's very capable. I think, if you compare him to some of the other contracts that were given out to tight ends, whether that's Charlie Kolar or Daniel Bellinger, for example, Daniel Bellinger got like $1 million less than Cade Otton. And Cade Otton, even on a down year, he had more yards and more catches than Kolar and Bellinger combined. So if you look at it from that, like, I think, I don't want to say Cade Otton's underrated. I think he's underrated in the fan base a little bit, but I think he's a very capable, solid tight end. But going into free agency, my take on him was, if it stops you, again, it's the same thing as Mike. If it stops you from making a true impact acquisition on the defensive side of the ball, then I'm going to let Cade Otton walk, because as much as I just said all those great things about him, I don't think it's a player where if you strip him off of it, you can't replace him, in the draft, especially the draft. Because I was thinking more in the draft, like maybe if they had let Cade walk, maybe you would added a cheap tight end, but then I would have wanted to draft one, because I think this draft, linebacker and tight end is just absolutely loaded. And you can find guys in the middle of the round like they did with Cade Otton, and you're not paying $10 million to your tight end room, at least for your tight end one, when there are so many other pressing needs. But listen, they lost Mike. I don't think they could stomach the idea of losing 3 playmakers off their team on offense when you factor in Rashad. And they love Cade, obviously, and he serves a role on this team. So now that everything, the dust has settled, I get why they did it, is the way I put it.
You mentioned Rachaad White, and like Rashad, I know things didn't really end well necessarily. I mean, he was saying for months how much he wants to get out of town. I don't know. It's a little surprising to me that Sean Tucker is getting more money than Rachaad White this season. Part of me feels like Rachaad White kind of painted himself into a corner with just showing so much appreciation for Jaden Daniels that it almost felt like it was Commanders or bust for him. But I don't know. Did that surprise you at all?
It did. It did. Rashad, I mean, he lacks juice, like I said earlier, but
yeah,
I think he's probably one of the best pass protectors in football, and you can't replace that. And Sean Tucker, everybody wanted him to get on the field much more the last 2 seasons, and I myself have said that too. But Sean Tucker he just is such a liability. He's such a he can't be a third down guy. He can't pass protect. He just cannot do it. He's a liability there. I don't think he's honestly been that great in short yardage situations either. Sean Tucker, I really don't. So it is.
That Saints game really sticks out. Sorry, not to cut you off. That Saints game certainly sticks out with the short yardage.
Yeah, that sticks out. I wanted him here. Like, I think he's a great third option. And if somebody gets hurt and he got to have some run as a one, like obviously, like he could have one of those crazy games, right, where he goes crazy. So, but yeah, Rashad, I think is probably vastly underpaid at what he got from Washington.
And speaking liability, sometimes liability and injuries and things come up. You want to make sure you have the right attorneys on your side, and there's nobody better to work with than our friends over at Jorgensen Law.
Welcome to Jorgensen Law PA, where our family's legacy drives us to fight for your rights. Specializing in personal injury, workers' compensation, and Social Security, we're committed to winning for you. No fees unless we succeed. Trust in our family to help yours. Let's achieve justice together.
That's right. Jorgensen Law is the official injury attorney of PewterReport.com. They are the champions of the injured and the disabled. Based out of St. Petersburg, Florida. You can give them a call at 727-347-7733. That is 727-347-7733. You can get a free case evaluation by teaming up with Jorgensen Law. And they will not take any fees until they win your case. They are that confident in their group of attorneys to get the job done for you. So give them a call. And thanks to Jorgensen Law for their sponsorship of PewterReport.com. Jorgensen Law, the champions of the injured and disabled. We're on with Nick Geddes on today's Pewter Report podcast. Happy St. Paddy's Day, everybody, once again. I want to give a shout out to KJ Chap, who has become a new Pewter Report YouTube channel member. Thank you very much for your support. And a couple super chats as well. Geist8569, thank you for the $2 super chat. Says some are picking Trotter, that's Josiah Trotter, over Jacob Rodriguez. We talked a little bit about Trotter yesterday. Michael Pless is a big fan of him. There's certainly some traits to like. And I'm not just getting on the Jacob Rodriguez campaign because Scott's a big fan. But I feel like Jacob Rodriguez, based on what he did at the Senior Bowl, obviously what he did at Texas Tech, what he did at the Senior Bowl, and then his combine numbers and everything like that. Jay Rodriguez, to me, is a guy that could end up late first round, let alone, early in the second round. Not sure how much you've been paying attention to the draft or the combine and everything like that. But any thoughts on Jacob Rodriguez?
I think he's a player that I don't overthink it. I think that's what started with like the draft process. He was like, some people like when this really first started, like back in December, I saw him like, people saying, oh, 4th round pick, whatever. Nice story, but like, come on, he's not going to be that top tier NFL guy. But I think as the process has gone on, the combine that he had, all the workouts, he's just sort of risen up now to where the Bucs are sitting at 46. And I don't know if he's getting to 46. And I'm with you. I think the more this goes on, he might find his way into the back half of the first round. I don't know if I don't think he has the ceiling to be like an all-pro or anything, but I think you're just going to get a really, really good football player. And you can't have enough of those.
That is very true. I get the feeling that a team, maybe it's Tampa Bay, I hope it's Tampa Bay, a team may trade back into the first round, late 20s, maybe 30, something like that, to get Jacob Rodriguez, so you get that extra fifth year, that team control for another year. I think a team like Tampa Bay, that would make a ton of sense, even though Jason Light is always apprehensive to trade some draft picks. But I don't know. I would keep an eye out for that. Another super chat, this one from one Robert Gill. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Says, worst case scenario, Baker goes down and we get a top 5 pick. Do we re-sign Baker or draft a quarterback with a great class coming? First of all, I don't think you want to root for a player to get injured, so definitely don't want Baker to get injured. But I did have a question as I was preparing for the show. You know, we haven't talked about Baker Mayfield a lot. I was going to say this week, I guess yesterday, because yesterday was Monday. I got my vision on the end of the week with March Madness coming up. But, Nick, if I were to ask you right now, one, if you're Baker Mayfield, are you signing an extension with Tampa Bay this offseason? And two, he is under contract for this year. Is he going to be playing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the following season in 2027?
Boy, that is like the, you know, we're thinking of so much how we improve this team and free agency and draft. And his situation has been sort of, it's like under the radar or just, you know, it's in the back of your mind, but it's a real thing. And I don't think there should be no rush for Jason Light to do this in the Glazers. Like, I wouldn't do it right now, not after the season he just had. And listen, I'm not putting it all on Baker, but you have to be realistic. He was pretty, I thought he was pretty brutal down the stretch last year for the Bucs. And there were a lot of numbers that kind of wore that out and probably falling too much into Baker hero ball habit sometimes and thinking he could just make these great plays that just aren't there. I don't think he's as bad though as he showed last year. I don't think he is. And I think that's the thing with Baker is you're going to have these insane highs and you're going to have these crazy lows sometimes. And you just hope that he gets hot at the right time and he's on the high end of it. But it's not all on him. You know, there's a lot of things that went wrong last year. It would make it so much easier if Baker went out this year and balled and had a year. I don't think he's going to have a year like he did in 2024 under Cohen. I think that's probably the Baker. But if he could settle into kind of what he was in 2023 or maybe just a tick better than that, then I've seen all I need to see. And Baker Mayfield, you know, by all means, give him your extension. I'd rather have Baker Mayfield playing at that level than say, you know what, I'm just going to let him go. And now I'm going to go try to find somebody. The Bucs haven't, that's hard to do. It's very hard to do. And I think it's a very risky move to make. So I don't think I give him the extension this year. If I'm predicting it, I think he does play better this year. Granted, especially if the offensive line stays healthy, I think there's enough around him. I think he's going to be very locked in to try to prove everybody wrong that last year, you know, was just an anomaly. So I think he plays better this year, and I think he earns an extension. I don't know what that number is going to be, but I think we all can accept that when it comes to quarterbacks, like it's going to be somewhere in the 50. That's probably the low end is 50, and it's going to be maybe as high as at 60.
That's the risk when it comes to kind of letting him play and knowing that you don't have him under contract after this season. Like, you're not rooting against him by any means because he's going to be doing great things for your team if he is successful. But
it's just too risky to do it right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree because like at a minimum, I mean, quarterbacks get stupid money, dude. Like a minimum, he's gonna, if he hit the market, he'd be getting $50 million in free agency right now. And maybe this offseason isn't the best example because there is the other side of it where next year, you never know who's going to be a quarterback needy team, who's going to be desperate. And at the same time, it's a really good quarterback class next season. You got Arch Manning coming out, Dante Moore. There's like a couple of other names as well that, you know, should be hitting the draft and makes it accessible for other teams as well. And it's also like, where is Tampa Bay at this moment? You know, are they a team that got back to double-digit wins, won their division, made it to an NFC championship game? What if they have another 8-9 season and miss out on the playoffs again? Are you going to sink all that money into a quarterback that hasn't made the postseason over the last 2 years? I think a big factor in all of this, too, and honestly, if I'm Baker Mayfield, I'm not signing an extension, even if the Bucs came to me with an offer, because Baker Mayfield has built up enough stock, credit, whatever you want to call it, based on what he's done in Tampa Bay, that there are a dozen of other teams that would have loved to have Baker if he were to hit free agency. I mean, I think the Vikings probably take Baker Mayfield over Kyler. I know the Jets probably would have given a call for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
So I think even if Baker were to have somewhat of a down year, it's not like a reclamation project once again for him. He's built it up enough where he's shown that he can be successful in the right situation. So I think if I'm Baker, I don't give him an extension. If I'm the Bucs, I don't give an extension either, because worst case scenario, if he lights it up and it is the 2024 season, again, you always do have the franchise tag. And yeah, that'll be extremely expensive, but we've seen how it looks when the Bucs don't have a quarterback. And once you got a guy, it's very difficult to let him go.
Yeah, I think I do speak though for everybody. Like, I think you want badly, like, this is probably the emotion side of you and the Buck fan that would come out. Like, you see everything that Baker Mayfield means to the team, that he means to the locker room, really that he means to the community, to be honest. Like, and just his personality and just the way he carries himself. Like, you want him so badly to be the guy. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't think there's one person that's just thinking like, oh, like, I don't like this guy, I'm turned off by him, like, get him out of here, or anything like that. Like Jameis was a very polarizing figure for many, and obviously his play dictated a lot of that too. But with Baker, I feel like everybody's just on the same parallel. It's like, man, we really want this guy to be the guy. But to your point, I think it's going to be very, very, sort of, what do the Bucs do this season? What does it look like? Like, if they go, first of all, if they win 5 games this year, well, Baker probably didn't play well. That's probably part of it. And so at that point, you have 2 years in a row of, okay, this isn't good. It's trending in the right direction or the wrong direction. He's on the wrong side of 30 now. We know that his movements in the pocket and the scrambling ability, that's a key part of his game. And honestly, when that got taken away from him last year, we kind of saw what it looked like, and it wasn't really good. So it's a very nuanced discussion. And I'm glad we talked about it, because it's that one thing that's sort of like lingering in the background is what's going on with Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Maybe he'll be extra motivated because Mike left, and we all know his vitriol for Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta based on what Baker had to say about him on social media. But how much of an impact do you think Zach Robinson will have on getting Baker back to, a top 10 quarterback, which I think he probably was in 2024? We all know his connection coming from the Sean McVay tree. He's best friends with Liam Cohen. What do you think Zach Robinson will get out of Baker?
Yeah, I think he raises the floor, first of all, I think of the entire offense. And it's one of those things where I think Todd's talked about it. Like, I don't think he doesn't have to sort of be, right on top of Josh Grizzard. What is he doing? He has never done this before. And even, he had to do it with Canales, I'm sure, as well. I think he can leave everything to Zach Robinson. And, I'm willing to give him a second shot here. 2 years ago, he was one of the most highly coveted offensive play caller candidates out there. I don't think that's a stretch to say. And I think the last 2 years in Atlanta probably has changed his reputation a little bit, but of course there's context to that. Kirk Cousins, when he's not facing Todd Bowles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, is completely cooked, just completely cooked. And then Penix, injuries, all those things. And I also think people have overrated the Falcons offense. They look at London, they look at Bijan Robinson, fantastic players, and they go, oh, he's got all these weapons and they didn't do anything. Yeah, well, who was the other pass catchers on the Falcons? Like, outside of like a stretch last year for Kyle Pitts, I mean, there wasn't much there, offensive line, very meh. So I think this is going to be the best overall group that Zach Robinson has worked with. And I think you're going to see some concepts of what Liam Cohen had that I think Zach Robinson is going to try to build on. There's a relationship there. There's a relationship there with Baker. So all of those things I think made sense as to why they went and got him. I definitely was on board with bringing in an offensive coordinator who at least has experience. I don't think it made sense to go down the route of somebody who's never done it before based on the situation that they're in, especially when Todd might be coaching for his job. Just can't afford to do that. So I think he elevates or raises the floor at least. I'm still questioning to see what the ultimate like ceiling is, because I don't think he's one of these like, complete genius type play caller types. And those guys are very hard to find. The Bucs had one 2 years ago. I don't think he's that, but I think he's probably somewhere in that tier below them.
It's certainly, and I'm not trying to bash Josh Grizzard, but it's certainly an upgrade in terms of he has play calling experience. He's seen how things work, how things don't work. And Todd Bowles doesn't necessarily have to babysit him the way that he kind of had to with Josh Grizzard. And I think the two big things for Robinson in Atlanta, and you already talked about it, but the quarterback play, I mean, you had guys that were immobile, and we know how Baker likes to be on the run. And I'm with you with what you said before, where Baker tried to play hero ball too much. The schoolyard BS is fun with Baker, but it gets to a certain point where it becomes too much. It's fun when you do it from time to time. But I think, and I hope Robinson will get back to the rhythmic timing, play action bootlegs with Baker Mayfield, where you kind of get the best of both worlds. Baker can get out of the pocket and he can throw on the run and he can get his little schoolyard BS going, but it's not too chaotic and too out of control.
Yeah.
So I think the difference in quarterback play is big. And then also, to your point about kind of like the weapons on Atlanta, if you're comparing the sum of all the parts between Tampa Bay and Atlanta, the Falcons may have the best weapon in Bijan Robinson. But if you compare the rest of the wide receiver group and the offensive line, I mean, it's a knockout in maybe 3 rounds in Tampa Bay over Atlanta when you look at the rest of the sum of the parts. So I think when you add all of that in, I can understand the frustration about Zach Robinson. But once he gets his hands on this team and these skilled players, I don't think it'll look anything like it was in Atlanta.
No, I agree. And I think the offensive line is the big difference. And honestly, it's probably the big X factor on the team in general. I don't think we can overstate enough what Cody Mauch, a healthy Cody Mauch, does to that offensive line, and having everybody all in their 5 positions. Graham Barton not having to move around, at 3 different positions, and Geddes being out of the lineup and Wirfs being out of the lineup. Like, that stuff matters. And the Bucs getting back to being able to run the football the way they did, I think that's going to be the ultimate thing that helps Zach Robinson, as he gets better health maybe than Josh Grizzard did. But I think because he's done it before, the tree that he comes from, I think he's going to have some more answers if things break down, whereas I don't think Josh Grizzard did. And the last thing I'll say is, hopefully, he's able to be blunt with Baker Mayfield and be able to be honest with him, so that when Baker, if he falls back into those tendencies, let's not just allow him to be a rogue agent. Let's rein him in a little bit and let's add some structure. And if Zach Robinson can do that, I think he can be quite successful with everything that is around him.
So with everything we just said, and looking at all of the parts, the new additions, Zach Robinson, the offense, and everything like that, with Todd Bowles going into this season still as the head coach of this team, do you think the Bucs are closer to a reload or a rebuild? Because on the one hand, you can say that, Jason Light, he's brought in some good players, but the talent hasn't been good enough. He hasn't found an edge rusher. But on the other hand, how much is that on the coaches not being able to develop guys, not being able to get the best out of the guys? Because I think there's another case to be made where, if you took out Todd Bowles and his coaching staff and put in Kyle Shanahan and his coaching staff, or another successful team, I think the Bucs do end up getting 10 wins, maybe even 11 wins. So are they closer to a reload or a rebuild or a reload?
I think it's a reload. I tend to think most people think it's closer to a rebuild, but I think, as we've sort of talked about it today, there's just too much. Is there enough talent to be a Super Bowl contender? No. But there is still a good amount of talent on this team. Even if you compare it to a team I'll even use New England, for example. And I know New England was just in the Super Bowl. If you compare the two rosters, Are you going to tell me that the Bucs don't match up with the New England?
It was a close game in Tampa this
year. It was a close game. I just don't think it's that far apart. Now, the win-loss told you it was, but I don't think from a roster standpoint that they're that far away. And keep in mind, they play in the NFC South. And this is part of the equation. You have to look around at the division. I hate everything that the Falcons have done. I hate everything. Now, I like it because I don't like it because I hate what they've done. But I don't understand anything they're doing. I don't. I think the Falcons are just spinning their wheels. I don't understand it.
They added nothing on offense. I mean, they brought in Tua, but that's a backup quarterback. Their depth pieces are just as good as what they had.
Jahan Dotson 2 years, $15 million. I think Jahan Dotson might have sat there on free agency for a long time, and they signed him on the first day and gave him $15 million. But that's their issue. But my point is, also, the James Pierce thing that happened, and that's obviously a very serious situation, but they did just lose a pass rusher, and that trade looks absolutely horrible that they did. So I don't like anything the Falcons are doing, and I don't think they got better, is what I'm saying. The Panthers, I know they made the splash signings. I love the Devin Lloyd signing. I think it's great value, and their defense is starting to come along. The Jalen Phillips signing, I think, is outrageous, just completely outrageous. And if the Bucs would have done that, even I would have been, as much as I think we all wanted the Bucs to make a splash, I think most people would have been like, really? That's the splash? And that's the guy you're going to pay $30 million? No. And
the money to me is outrageous on that one.
Yeah, that's probably the worst money value that was out there. But so Carolina, did they get better? Maybe a little bit. Did they get the Bucs last year? Yeah, they did. Was I impressed by the Panthers, though, for the most part? Not really. And now they're switching. Canales is not calling plays. Brad Idzik's going to call plays. How's that dynamic going to work? Jairo Avero still has a job there. I don't understand that. So I think the Panthers are sort of not that improved. Ironically, I think the Saints have been probably I think they're the one that are trending in the best direction right now based on I like the signings they made. They might have somebody in Tyler Shuck, but probably not ready to go this year. So when you add it all up, I think the Bucs are still I could make the argument they're still they're the favorite this year to win the NFC South. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn because who's the best quarterback in the division? I still think it's Baker Mayfield. He's the guy. I think I trust him more than anybody in the division right now. If there's a coaching staff that's better than this one, even with the issues that we have with this coaching staff, it ain't by a lot. And I think the Bucs have, they just have really good players all over the place still. They just need to stay healthy. So I think it's still there. I don't think it's close to a rebuild yet. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, I think they're a couple of just tweaks away. Obviously the Max Crosby conversation took up a lot of the offseason. If they were to find a big-time pass rusher like that, and maybe it's through the draft, but, if they had a great pass rush, I think that changes everything for this team. Or if their offense can get back to 30-plus points per game, there are certain warts on this team as well. So my next question to you would be, does Todd Bowles get through this season and still be the head coach next year? Because there's no doubt he's on the hot seat going into this season. But I get the sense of if Zach Robinson is able to figure out this offense and put the pieces together, and it looks like the Liam Cohen type of offense, I don't know if the Glazer family wants to go through another experience of losing their offensive coordinator to become a head coach somewhere else and revamping that team and making them a contender, where the Bucs are kind of just sitting on their hands once again.
Yeah, you can't afford to do that if that's what ends up happening. I do think the Bucs, like I said, I think they're the favorites still going into the season, even as it is before the draft. I think they're the favorites to win the division. Let's say they win the division, but I think it's probably going to be with 9 wins. I think more likely than not, they'll get bounced in the wild card round, and we'll just be right back to square one. And in that scenario plays out, then no, there's no way you can bring Todd Bowles back. Because ultimately, the Bucs had a fantastic roster in 2024. That's probably that was the team. That was the best team that they had assembled to this point under this post-Brady era, I would say. And they won 10 games and got bounced in the wild card. I think that should have shown everybody that, okay, that's the ceiling. That's what it is. And if you're okay with that, cool. I'm not personally. And I just think that you can make all these tweaks you want. I just think we've seen enough evidence to know that it's an 8 to 10 win football team whose ceiling is winning a bad division and getting bounced in a home game in the wild card round. And I think that's what's going to happen again this year. And if that scenario, then no, he will not be back.
Yeah, I find it very hard to believe that he'll be coaching for more than just this season. Part of me feels like there is a little bit of a fear of, because Bowles can get you to a certain point, but the Bucs are just toiling in mediocrity. But the fear of cutting bait with Bowles and not hiring the right guy, and then it's the quote unquote decade of darkness all over again. But if you're like giving the effort to try to better the team, I don't know, like you can't just sit on the sidelines. Eventually you got to try to go for it. So it does feel like kind of the Dungy situation all over again. But even Dungy took him much further than Todd Bowles ever did. I mean, he's been a coach for 8 years now head coach between the Jets and the Bucs. He's only had 2 double-digit win seasons. And I think that's telling a lot, especially with the NFC South and what's gone on with that division for a couple of years. Got a couple more super chats to get to. We'll start with Bucs fans since Leroy. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Says, deal down 15 OV to Kansas City for 29 and 40. Plenty of good offensive tackles in the mid-first round. Chiefs need 1 defensive tackle, inside linebacker, and edge, all before the 3rd round. I'm all for the Bucs moving back a little bit in this first round, because I feel like 15 for the Bucs specifically this year is a little bit in that no man's land of you're not going to get the top edge rusher that you want. It's a little bit too early for Jacob Rodriguez. I like C.J. Allen, but some people don't think C.J. Allen, the Georgia inside linebacker, should be that pick at 15. Cassius Howell, if he's there. So I'm all in favor of Tampa Bay trading back this year for sure.
I'm very simple on it. I would take CJ Allen at 15 if he's there. I wouldn't have any questions asked about it. But if he's not there, I see so many mock drafts, and I think this morning Mel Kiper had his latest, and he had them taking Kenyon Sadiq, and there's just so many people that keep saying Kenyon Sadiq or Keldrick Falk, and I'm like, it's driving me nuts. I'm like, those are the 2 players that I just think make the least amount of sense. And even Mesidor, I don't think it makes sense because I just am not sold on taking 25-year-old rookie in the first round at 15th overall. And so I do think, like you said, they're going to be in no man's land. You still have some positions of need. I'm trading back into the 20s, and I'm going to have more dart throws at this thing. That's what I'm doing, because I think the edge rushers in the 2nd and 3rd round, I kind of actually like more than the ones that are going in the 1st round.
I think that's totally fair. You can stock up not just at edge, but at inside linebacker as well. Find yourself a defensive tackle to add to that line as well. Falk, there's no chance he goes to the Bucs. Just not a fit for Tampa Bay. Sadiq, I could have been down with up until the Kate Otten signing. And with all the other help you need on this team, it doesn't make sense anymore. T-Level, thanks for the $2 super chat, says, not a Super Bowl caliber team, in quotations, but we beat Seattle. I mean, there's going to be upsets every year in the NFL. That game was the first week of October? The teams were vastly, vastly different as the season went on. But hey, Bucs did beat the Super Bowl champs. They can hang their hat on that.
Yeah, I also remember the Rams game too. Right after that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how about, I don't know, Carolina down the stretch, Miami? They lost to Miami, Yeah, there's a lot of examples. Mopar Buck, thank you for the $19.99 super chat. We appreciate it. Says, this team has struggled with the majority of all the bad teams season in and season out. Yeah, I mean, that's a great example with down the stretch this most recent season. We catch pelt to ass with all the top teams. We're ragging on the NFC South teams, but when have we dominated them? We're average at best. I think that's been a knock on Tampa Bay, Nick, is that at times they've played up to their competition and then down to their competition. Last season, they played down to their competition for sure, and then got absolutely waxed by the Lions, the Rams, like you mentioned. I mean, Buffalo is competitive back and forth game, but their defense certainly became a laughing stock in that one. So, yeah, I think that's something that needs to be looked at too.
Yeah, even the games they won, like the Jets game early in the season, that should have never got to that point. It's going to be forever infamous because of the Mike Evans moment. The Atlanta game was another one. They played bad against Arizona in a win later in that season. Didn't particularly play well against New Orleans in a win, after the Detroit game. So, yeah, they definitely they've been guilty of that for sure. Last year, though, was just a complete failure all around. It's hard to say that was like a true indictment of what they were, because they did some things last year that they weren't even doing before.
For sure. Kind of like my golf game, where you never know where it's going to be. It could be good. It could be bad. I can drive the ball. Then all of a sudden I can chip, but then I can't drive anymore. But if you're an avid golfer like myself, you enjoy hitting the links, check out Heritage Isles Golf and Country Club. It is a country club, but it's open to the public as well, and has been ranked in the top 3 best value courses in the Tampa and St. Petersburg area by Golf Advisor. If you want to set up a tee time, give them a call at 813-907-7447. That's 813-907-7447. Also, want to give a huge shout out to our Pewter Platinum members. We appreciate each and every one of you for your support of PewterReport.com and Pewter Report TV. We will have a bonus show, for our Pewter Insider coming up on Friday at 1:30. But in the meantime, we will let those names scroll on the screen. A couple of quick questions for you, Nick. This one, I had mentioned them earlier. Well, you had mentioned them, and then I said we were going to get back to it. What is more likely to happen this season? A bounce-back year for Zion McCollum and Benjamin Morrison just kind of getting his feet under him, or Chris Godwin Jr. returning to his vintage self?
Chris Godwin. I have to go with the known commodity, because Chris Godwin has had to answer for that question multiple times, and every time he has returned to his true self. There's a lot of miles on Chris, though, that you have to keep in mind there. There's a lot of miles on him, a lot of serious injuries to him, all lower body. Curious to see I just don't know how that wide receiver room is going to shake out yet, of who's positioned where, who's on the fields at the same time.
Yeah.
But in theory, Chris should be the guy that gets the most targets. So I think Chris, if he stays healthy, should go over 1,000 yards, because he was starting to look more like himself at the end of last season.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, as the season went on, after he came back from that fibula injury, there were moments where it felt like it was the vintage Chris Godwin again. Bucs Fanson's Leroy says, is both an answer? Yes. I mean, the hope is that both of these things come true, but this is part of the show. And then another one, what is more likely to happen? Graham Barton takes the next step at center and develops even more than he did last season, or Kalijah Kancey gets through an entire season.
Boy. Oh man. You know what? I'm trying to manifest good things, so I'm gonna say Kalijah Kancey making it through a full season, and I might look silly. But we haven't talked about him, but I really mean this. I think Kalijah Kancey, you look at the way the Bucs pass rush really struggled last year, 4-man rush that is. To me, it all happened when Kalijah was not, when he suffered the injury. I think Kalijah is the most important piece that they have in the front seven, full stop. I think the way he gets off the ball as quick as he does, that to me just cannot be replicated by Vita, by even Yaya, or whoever else was on the other side. Kalijah Kancey is the most important piece to that success of the front seven in the pass rush. And I think having him back is going to be massively important. I need him to stay healthy so bad, and that's why I'm sort of manifesting here by saying it. I think if he plays a full 17-game season, I don't think it's out of the question that he could get 10 sacks. I think he's got that type of talent to him. Yeah. I really, really do.
No doubt about it. I mean, he led the team in sacks a couple of seasons ago. He is vastly important to this team, to this defense. They win when he plays. I mean, that's just kind of, yesterday was 316 day. That's the bottom line, is they win when Kalijah Kancey is in there. and he just provides just another dynamic to this team that it was sorely missed when he got injured in Houston and missed almost all of the season. He came back for that season finale. And then that's kind of the beauty of having A'Shawn Robinson as well, is, he can bring a little versatility. He's more of a backup for Vita Vea than he is Kalijah Kancey, but just adding overall depth for that team. But I hope Kalijah Kancey's able to play a full season. Problem is, he usually gets hurt in training camp. The one time he didn't was last season, but he got hurt in the second game. So it's got to be baby steps with him. Get through training camp, get through the first month, get through that second month. And I have a tough time kind of easing my mind about Kalijah Kancey, just knowing that injury, and it's been different injuries. It was the torn pec last year, but it can kind of pop up really at any moment. We got a couple of more super chats coming in. Thank you very much to Mopar Buck once again. Thanks for the $9.99 super chat. Says, given Godwin's bad contract, $66 million, he better get 1,000 yards. Shaking my head. It's the last year where it's guaranteed. So even if Godwin isn't able to produce the way that he used to, the Bucs can get him off the books after this year. So I think that's important. And then Realtor David Zussman, thank you for the $19.99, says the real issue is Jason Light. He is first of all, Realtor David Zussman is just a Jason Light hater. It's just been very well established on the show.
Okay.
He is so incompetent that if a team had prepared a game plan to play against us 4 years ago, our weakness and roster holes remain the same in 2026. No coach can overcome Light's incompetence. Nick, just your overall thoughts on Jason Light, the job he's done as general manager.
I really think that people that want Jason Light gone and out the building and don't think he's a really good GM, I think personally you're just missing it a little bit. That's just me. I think he's in a very unique situation where he deals with an ownership group that is not just one person, it's multiple owners. And I think Josh Capo has done a really, really good job of trying to educate everyone, including myself, honestly, on this stuff about the cash spending and how the Glazers rank in the bottom third historically since the Suns have been running it. I think that's a real thing. I do. That's not to say Jason doesn't make mistakes. Like I'm not a Jason like just all in defender. He's made his fair share of bad moves. Every GM does. Yeah. But I think he's done really well to keep this team competitive and in the mix. And there's still really, really good players all over this roster, and all of them have been drafted for the most part by Jason Light, and all kind of recently. The problem is sometimes I think is there's a lot of, some of these guys might be like B players or stuff like that, B plus players. They get really good value, but are they getting enough of the A type players? Yeah, maybe they're not getting that, but I think you could do a lot worse than Jason Light. And I would caution everybody to run him out the door. And I would also say, when has Jason Light last hired a head coach? Truthfully, it was in 2019 when he hired BA. And if you go through his history, he didn't hire Lovie Smith. The Dirk Cutter call, I think, was from ownership. He hired BA, and then Bowles was going to get that job because of the circumstances behind it. This guy has hired one head coach in 13 years as the GM. Remember that, basically. And he hit a home run on it.
Yeah,
so
extremely.
Even if they have a bad year this year and Bowles gets fired, I'm not firing Jason. I'm going to give that guy the opportunity to go hire another damn good head coach.
I think those are all extremely valid points. And if you look at every GM across the league, they're all going to have bad draft picks at one point or another. And I think he should be judged more about the team success and the good players he's drafted versus the ones that did not work out. So I think that was well said. Bucs fan since Leroy, thank you for the $5 super chat, says Caden Curry is falling on draft boards, the Ohio State defensive tackle, despite double-digit sacks. Why? Also liking Grayson Halton as defensive tackle 2 for the Bucs. Curry's a hard-nosed guy. I don't have a good answer for why he's dropping, but anyone that comes from that style of defense, I don't think it's a bad idea to take a player like that. But we'll kind of see as this draft process goes along. By the way, just a reminder for some scheduling purposes, tomorrow we're back at 4 o'clock. Shout out to John Cena. Bucs get an attitude adjustment. We'll talk about the overall mindset and mentality of this team as Bailey Adams joins me at 4 o'clock. Then later that evening, around 8:15, maybe 8:30, SR and Josh Capo will be revealing their third mock draft. And to no surprise, the Bucs are getting a defensive haul. And then myself and Scott are on for Thursday, talking about the remaining needs that the Bucs will have in the 2026 offseason. And then there will be a Pewter Insider on Friday as well at 1:30. Nick, this has been a lot of fun. Can't thank you enough for joining us again. Please tell everybody where they can find your work and anything else you got going on besides being a new dad.
That's taking up all of my bandwidth right now. Trust me. But thank you for having me on. I enjoyed the discussion. Love the show as always. You can find me there on Twitter, Nick Geddes News, where I'm often tweeting some of my frustrations with the Bucs and some praise as well, and some other things. And my work over at on3.com. We have a lot going on there, especially with draft season just around the corner, as do y'all. So be definitely paying attention. This is like the last sort of exciting thing, I think, of the off season until we really start getting into training camp. So let's enjoy it. Let's have some fun.
Absolutely. And it's right around the corner, and it'll come sooner than I think people realize. And so make sure you follow Nick. And then also, if you're not already doing so, please make sure you follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at Pewter Report. Our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video as well, where you think the Bucs are at. Can they be a contender? Are they a couple players away? We'd love to see everyone's opinions on it. That's it for today's show. For Nick Geddes, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks, everyone, for watching. Happy St. Paddy's Day, and we'll see you soon for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.